Imagine this: a fire, not sparked by human hands, but descending directly from the heavens, searing onto a massive 30-foot-wide block of bronze. In mere seconds, the towering wood stacked 3 stories high vanishes, the stone beneath glows a menacing red, and the priests? They're on the ground, overwhelmed. That moment, vividly captured in 2 Chronicles 7, isn't just a historical event, it's arguably the most dramatic selfie in ancient Israelite history. Yet for all its spectacle, the very altar at the center of it all often gets relegated to a historical footnote. Today, we're going to rewind from that explosive flashpoint, step into the ancient courtyard of Solomon's temple, and really dig into why this colossal hunk of metal carried the hopes, fears, and faith of an entire nation. What made it so important? And what can it still tell us? Seriously, picture a 2-car garage. Now, double its size. That gives you a rough idea of the sheer scale of Solomon's bronze altar. It wasn't just big, it was monumental. Measuring an impressive 20 cubits square and standing 10 cubits high, that's roughly 30 feet by 30 feet at its base and a formidable 15 feet tall. Can you imagine the presence it commanded in the temple courtyard? This wasn't some quaint little hearth. It was an engineering marvel, a statement in metal and stone. The altar's exterior wasn't just plain bronze, it was clad in plates painstakingly hammered from the confiscated armor of enemy chariots. Think about that for a moment. The very instruments of oppression and war, transformed into a symbol of worship and peace. What a powerful message, right? Beneath this gleaming, repurposed skin lay an inner core of solid clay and fieldstone, providing immense structural integrity. From each of its 4 corners, stout horns projected skyward. These weren't just decorative, they held profound significance. Fugitives grasping these horns could beg for sanctuary, a desperate plea for mercy. Priests, on the other hand, would grip them while swearing solemn oaths, binding themselves before God. It was a place of both refuge and unwavering commitment. Just below the altar's upper ledge, a waist-high mesh grate ran around its perimeter. This clever design wasn't accidental, it was crucial. It allowed the roaring fire to breathe, ensured that ash could fall away, and kept the daily sacrifices burning continuously through the long, dark nights. Nothing about this design was subtle. It was engineered not just for function, but to be seen, to be noticed, to dominate the skyline from every rooftop in Jerusalem. It was a tangible anchor for their faith. So, why bronze for such a central, sacred object? In the ancient world, bronze wasn't just any metal. It was the cutting-edge, SpaceX alloy of its day. This wasn't a choice made lightly. Bronze was tough, incredibly heat-proof, and notoriously loud when hammered into shape, signaling its robust nature. Solomon's skilled foundries, located in the Jordan Valley, undertook the immense task of casting these massive panels. They poured molten bronze into intricate clay molds, fueled by a steady, intense draft of bellows, a testament to the advanced metallurgical skills of the era. The selection of bronze wasn't merely practical, it was deeply symbolic. Gold, while precious, would warp under the intense, constant heat of sacrifice. Wood would char and disintegrate. Even stone, though durable, could crack and crumble over time. Bronze, however, spoke of permanence. It declared unequivocally, "This relationship endures." It was a material testament to God's unwavering covenant with His people, a physical embodiment of strength and judgment that could withstand the fires of both devotion and divine scrutiny. Centuries later, when Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian forces ransacked Jerusalem and carted away the temple treasures to Babylon, what happened to the altar? It was simply too immense, too heavy to move. So the soldiers did what they could. They broke off the decorative grates and left the core, a charred silhouette against the fallen walls. Even in ruin, this magnificent bronze structure refused to entirely disappear, a silent, weighty witness to a covenant that, despite appearances, persisted. Its sheer resilience, its stubborn refusal to be utterly consumed or removed, echoed the enduring nature of the divine promise it represented. Before that spectacular moment, when heaven itself struck the match, there was a different fire, one meticulously tended by human hands. For generations, priests kept a continuous human-made fire alive on the altar, every hour of every day. This wasn't just a practical necessity, it was a profound act of devotion, symbolizing the unbroken connection between God and his people, a constant offering of their hearts. They fed it with terebinth logs, chosen not just for their heat, but for their unique properties. These logs popped like kettle corn and emitted a sweet aromatic resin, said to symbolize the prayers of the people rising upward to God. The altar was the beating heart of Israelite worship, a place where the sacred intersected with the everyday. Shepherds would bring their blemish-perfect lambs, a testament to purity and sacrifice. Farmers, with simpler means, offered doves. Merchants, with their abundance, brought fine flour. Each offering, whether a costly animal or a handful of grain, was presented with careful ritual. There were burnt offerings, where the entire animal was consumed by fire, a complete dedication to God. There were sin offerings, designed to atone for transgressions, and peace offerings, fostering fellowship and expressing thanksgiving. The altar served as the nation's spiritual credit card terminal. Guilt was acknowledged, symbolically swiped, and the balance paid through the sacrifice, with the receipt issued in the rising plume of smoke. Day after day, year after year, this routine unfolded. The meticulous preparation, the solemn prayers, the rising smoke, it was all part of the rhythm of their faith. But let's be honest, even the most sacred routines can sometimes numb the senses. It's easy for the extraordinary to become ordinary. And perhaps that's why, when the dedication of the temple finally arrived, God chose to break the pattern, to sign his name not with smoke, but with a sudden, undeniable flash of lightning. The biblical account in 2 Chronicles 7 isn't just a dry historical record. It compresses centuries of longing, anticipation, and faith into one breathtaking paragraph. The scene is set. King Solomon, having poured out his heart in a 7-stanza prayer, steps backward from the altar. The air is thick with expectation, the culmination of years of labor and devotion. And then it happens. Suddenly, fire doesn't just flicker, it peels out of a clear sky, a divine incandescent force. It wasn't a slow burn, it was an instantaneous, consuming inferno. The text tells us that the glory of the Lord filled the house. And this isn't just poetic language. The Hebrew word for glory, kabod, literally means weight or heaviness. It implies a substantial, almost physical presence. Imagine it. The priests, who moments before were officiating with practiced composure, felt that immense divine weight press them to the very pavement. They couldn't stand, couldn't move. Musicians, mid-strum, froze, their instruments silenced by the sheer power of the moment. The eloquent King Solomon, who had just offered such a moving prayer, went utterly silent, struck dumb by the undeniable manifestation of God. In that single, overwhelming flash, Israel learned a profound truth. The altar wasn't just a cosmic vending machine, a place where they deposited sacrifices and hoped for a return. No, it was something far more sacred, far more dynamic. It was a meeting place, a divine rendezvous point where heaven could, and indeed would, show up unannounced in a way that left no room for doubt or human manipulation. It was a powerful reminder that their God was not distant or passive, but intensely, powerfully present. In the ancient Near East, fire wasn't just a tool, it was often seen as the signature of divine approval. Kings and priests across various cultures longed for their deities to accept their offerings with such a tangible sign, but it was a rare and coveted sight. When an outside deity accepted a gift, flame was the ultimate receipt, validating the offering and the worshiper. So, when Israel watched their own sacrifice ignited not by human kindling, but supernaturally, by fire from heaven itself, it wasn't just impressive, it was transformative. This miraculous fire wasn't just a spectacle, it was the moment Israel's national identity crystallized around a core truth. Our God actually lives among us. This wasn't abstract theology. This was a tangible, undeniable demonstration of God's presence and acceptance of their worship and covenant. Other nations had altars, beautiful stonework, impressive structures. Archaeologists have indeed found Ammonite, Moabite, and Aramaean altars, all meticulously crafted, but notably with zero scorch marks from divine fire. Israel's altar alone bears the memory of a blast zone, a permanent scar from a divine encounter. It stands as a unique testament in a world of diverse religious practices. This incredible story didn't stay confined within the temple walls or the borders of Israel. It traveled. Centuries later, a powerful figure like the Queen of Sheba would journey from distant lands, arriving with hard questions, exotic spices, and a deep curiosity. Why? Because she was convinced that where God lands in such a dramatic, undeniable way, wisdom and profound truth are sure to follow. The fame of this divine fire spread, drawing seekers and solidifying Israel's reputation as a nation uniquely chosen and favored by a living, active God. After such an earth-shattering spectacle, you might expect life to be forever changed, dramatically different. Yet the daily routine, in many ways, reverted to normal. Levitical shift schedules resumed, the sacrifices continued, the duties were performed. But here's the kicker. Everything felt different. Every priest, as he went about his sacred duties, knew that the very grid beneath his feet, the bronze surface he tended, had once glowed with divine fire. That memory, that tangible encounter, couldn't be forgotten. Farmers still brought their lambs to the temple, but now they lingered longer. Their ears were open, not just to the bleating of their flock, but perhaps for the distant echo of thunder, for any sign of that awe-inspiring presence. Worship shifted from a mere obligation, a prescribed duty, to an act brimming with anticipation. The people weren't just going through the motions. They were actively awaiting, hoping for, another glimpse of their powerful, present God. Historians and theologians call this a liminal moment, a threshold experience. It's when an ordinary space becomes utterly saturated with extraordinary memory, transforming the mundane into the sacred. The altar, now forever etched with the memory of that divine fire, became Israel's North Star. It was a constant, immutable point of reference, even in later generations, when wayward kings set up rival shrines on hilltops, tempting the people with alternative worship. The bronze square in Jerusalem, with its undeniable history, anchored the nation's imagination. It was a powerful reminder of where true power and presence resided, a silent rebuke to idolatry and a constant callback to the covenant. Its story served as a spiritual compass for a nation prone to wandering. Tragically, the grandeur of Solomon's temple wasn't meant to last forever. In 586 BCE, the Babylonians swept through Jerusalem, leaving destruction in their wake. They torched the magnificent temple, reducing it to rubble. Yet, amidst the devastation, the altar's immense bronze core survived, a charred silhouette stubbornly standing against the fallen walls. It was a testament to its enduring construction, and perhaps its enduring spiritual significance. When the Jewish exiles finally returned under the leadership of Zerubbabel, they undertook the monumental task of rebuilding the temple. They meticulously reconstructed the altar, aligning it to the original bedrock. But there was a poignant difference. They couldn't rebuild the fire. The miraculous, heaven-sent flame that had initiated Solomon's temple was absent from the Second Temple, a constant reminder that while human hands could rebuild structures, divine authentication was a gift, not a guarantee. Centuries later, Herod the Great, seeking to gain favor with his Jewish subjects, dramatically enlarged the temple platform and refurbished the entire complex. Priests continued to lay sacrifices on a fresh bronze structure, still aligned to that ancient, sacred bedrock. The ritual endured, even if the initial fiery glory did not. Then, a pivotal shift occurred. John the Baptist emerged, declaring Jesus to be the Lamb of God. This profound statement began to redirect the imagery, moving away from animal sacrifices on a physical altar towards a deeper, ultimate atonement. Later, the writer of the New Testament book of Hebrews would take this imagery even further, claiming that the true altar isn't earthly at all, but heavenly. In this heavenly sanctuary, Christ himself serves as the ultimate high priest, offering a better sacrifice, his own life, once and for all. Yet every subsequent referent, whether from Jewish tradition, Christian theology, or academic study, points back to that foundational moment, that first, undeniable collision when heaven touched bronze, forever altering the landscape of faith and worship. The altar of Solomon was so much more than just a barbecue pit for religious tailgates, wasn't it? It was a monumental, deeply symbolic structure, a collision point where God's covenant promise met the national memory of Israel. It was where divine fire validated human longing, where an earthly structure became a conduit for heavenly power. Long after the bronze melted and the temple fell, the story of that altar keeps burning brightly. It reminds us that heaven approves of sacrifice, yes, but rarely, if ever, in the ways we script or expect. So if you ever feel stuck in routine worship, if your spiritual life feels a little too predictable, remember Israel. Remember the awe, the fear, the transformation. Stack the wood, say the prayer, do your part, and then look up. The blaze that truly matters, the fire that transforms and ignites, rarely comes from us. It comes from a sky big enough to land on 30 feet of bronze, and yet small enough to ignite a single waiting heart. If this story sparked new questions, or ignited a fresh perspective in you, tap the screen for the 3D walkthrough of Solomon's Temple next, or hit subscribe so you don't miss the next untold chapter in our journey through history and faith.